So, Richard, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. It's just a remarkable thing. I've known you for close to 20 years, not quite, but and certainly more formally.
1 year off 20.
Yeah, and more formally through the ACO
longer
board.
than 20.
Right, yeah, longer than 20, but more formally just a bit under 20. And, you know, my term, or my time, started on this amazing journey with the Australian Chamber Orchestra way back when Ken Brimo, a legal advisor to us, who was a director at the Australian Chamber Orchestra, must have
invited you to be
has
involved.
invited because there was a spare place on the thing, and I said, "Fantastic! What a wonderful opportunity! I'd love to do it." So you know, that's how I joined the ACO in 1996.
Amazing.
Yeah. So and I'm not sure if you remember Ken, but you know how
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a wonderful man. He had good, strong legal advice. He was advising us on the New Southern Railway, which is a project where we built the railway underground between Central and the airport. And that was a really important project, and he made a very good contribution to that. But as I think you were mentioning earlier, he did have involvement with the Liberal Party, and Liberals were in power at the time, so he was quite influential behind the scenes.
Yeah, so 20 years ago, and the orchestra, of course, was a totally different beast. We didn't have the internet, really. It was just starting up. We were sponsored by IBM. I remember being given my first laptop, and it roughly around that time, and you know, plugging it into the internet, and how things have changed in there's so many aspects of how we deliver music, except for actually walking on the stage.
Which is still the same, which is that wonderful traditional thing.
Well, I hope people still respect it. It's one hell of a battle, of course, because there are so many distractions, as you know. I mean, there are distractions at home that have increased so much. You know, before you had a book, TV, radio, or talking with people, and now you've got, you know, infinite amount of distractions there. So it's amazing that anyone still reads books, and it's the same with the concert hall. I'm surprised that, you know, people still make the effort to turn up to a concert hall.
Well, but Richard, the reason they do
music
is it's such a special experience. You know,
it is, but we need to increase people's awareness and that sanctity of the concert hall experience.
Yeah. Well,
that's why Pier 2-3
is very important.
I think it's the more I think about it, the more that the bricks and mortar should actually be regarded as something very special. Yeah.
Well, and that's you touch on a very raw nerve for me in many ways, because I made my first proposal in 1998.
Amazing.
To try to get this Australian Chamber
and thinking that the then Premier it would be a no-brainer for him. He goes, yeah, fantastic. But he didn't do it.
Didn't do anything. And it's been sitting effectively fallow all the way through there.
Yeah.
But remember, we redeveloped this whole precinct down here, and so we fixed it up. So in 2002 or 3, we actually gave back to the government a completely refurbished pier. Yeah. You know, piles had been pulled out, all the rotten ones, and new stuff got rid of the termites.
And you would have thought still they would have said yes.
And they've done nothing since 2000. So it's more than 10 years, 12 years ago. The thing's sitting there
lead
empty.
in the saddle. Yes. Anyway, look, let's hope that we're looking at, you know, but I understand, you know, we've got fiscal issues to address. But
well,
but you don't, in retrospect, you know, consider the fiscal issues. In retrospect.
Well, this is where leadership, I think, needs to come in. I don't think we've had good leadership really at the political level for some time, because you know you've got you've got to look at what can be achieved by actually getting on and doing something, you know, as opposed to saying.
And don't you want to leave that? That's what I don't understand about politicians. Let's say you're going to be a prime minister if you're lucky for 2 terms, maybe 3. Don't you want to leave a legacy and say, well, this is what
you'd think so, wouldn't you? But I think
they just get so caught up these days.
The motivators have changed.
So, God, how many prime ministers have we been through? Well, 96 was Howard. So, but I've been through Keating, Howard, Rudd, Gillard, Rudd,
and Abbott, and now Abbott.
6.
Yeah, in 25 years, because you've been with the orchestra 25 years. I mean, it must have been an amazing journey for you as well, Richard, starting there. You really, what were you, mid-20s, weren't you, when you started?
That's 24,
yeah. And, you know, what a responsibility to take on. I mean, that itself must have been an extraordinary moment and challenge for yourself. I mean, how did you mentally cope with taking over? I mean, I'm not sure if you expected it. You just got the job, and I suppose you.
Yeah, I thought I might last a couple of years, 3 years, but just the challenges keep on appearing. I never feel like that's what keeps me here, actually, because I never feel like just as I get over the hill, there's an even bigger hill or mountain in front. I think, well, I want to climb that one, or be here as the orchestra climbs it. Yeah. So, you know, I've been thrown off the horse twice.
Okay.
Twice. You know.
Do you want to talk about that or not?
Oh, why not? No, look, I don't. I mean, we don't have to go into the. You know, when you just think, no, I've had enough. Yeah. You know, the horse bucked a bit too hard. You get thrown off, but then sometimes when you're off, you think, oh, I'm not going to let that horse win. You know, and so it's been in no small part due to the engagement that I've had with the chairman. I can't remember his name now, but you know, and it's not just sort of you know a kind of innocuous support, which is sort of like compliments. No, it's quite the opposite. It's the challenge of, look, are we doing things the right way? Are you doing things the right way? That's real support, isn't it? Whether it's in a marriage, friendship, or in a professional way, to challenge what people are really doing and how they're doing it. And that's where I feel we've had fantastic stability, if I can use that word, from the board as a result of your leadership, Guido.
Thanks, Richard. Well, you know, there was a very seminal moment in our relationship. I'm sure you'll remember it. It was when we had clocked up a very big deficit. I'd just taken over the chair.
$1 million, yeah.
We had $1 million underground.
99.
We almost couldn't make the wages payment 1 week.
Yeah,
we got very close to insolvency. And we stepped in, 3 or 4 of us stepped in as directors to effectively run the company. So we rolled our sleeves up and got going. And during that period, we got the reasons for what happened is long, but you know, in short, we got distracted with trying to merge with Musica Viva, if you remember, which I think of all the things Helen Nugent did, that was not one of the good things. She did a lot of good stuff, but that wasn't a good idea. That distracted us. We lost sight of our sponsorship and support, and we got into a bad position. However, what happened during that period is that we were working to stabilise the management and our supporter base, but you were leading the orchestra as if nothing had happened behind the scenes. And every time I turned up to a performance, you were playing absolutely at the top level you could, which has always been at a supremely high level of performance. And I thought, well, you know, this is a great product. This thing has still got a wonderful artistic thing that we should protect. And when we talked one day, you and I, you said that you and your orchestra played a virtuoso level, and you threw the challenge to me and says, I want to see a virtuoso level at the management, at the board. That was a very seminal moment for me, because I then realised that we really did have to step up. That's what I was doing anyway, but that really gave me the spine to get on and not muck around. And then we put a really good board together.
Well, that's right. And because, you know, boards, when they're lovey boards, you know, full of loveys, or full of people who think it's a sort of, something that you do, you know, in your spare time, you feel it. Because this isn't spare time. This is the centre of the focus of Australia's culture. These institutions, the ACO, the various symphony orchestras, the theatre companies, and the dance companies. And it's only when you have that kind of focus that you can really improve things. If you just think, it's a nice sort of thing to do on a Sunday, forget it. And that's interesting, because, you know, people criticise certain boards, they're run by, you know, the money men and the bankers. Well, let me tell you something. If those Medicis didn't have the money, then those artists wouldn't have had the means to do it. And if you don't understand that equation, go and live in Soviet, you know, in a communist society or a fascistic society. You need that dynamic, and that's where I feel you brought this stability with a really good board. Sure, as soon as the money men start dictating what the art should be, apart from a commission, which is quite different, then it's out of balance, out of sync, and things start falling down. But so I think the board has been very responsible like that. It's not actually the board's job to talk about the art unless the art goes wrong, in the same way that it's not our job to talk about the money unless we start bleeding money and we wonder what the hell's going on.
That's right.
I mean, there needs to be a shared love of the very thing that makes us do what we do, which is the art. But without those funds, we don't exist. We can't pay people, we can't go on tour, we can't buy the instruments, we can't operate.
Yeah. And fundamentally, culture does reflect the level, quality and ambition of a society. If all you've got to do is go back through history and always see that art has always played a very central part in any great civilization.
Absolutely, but it's not, once it's viewed as a luxury item, there's a problem there, I think. Then you get a spoiled society.
Yeah.
If it's part of its core and you feel that it's, that people understand that this is why you express yourself, how you express yourself.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be corrupted by that money.
But I think you have developed a relationship with your audience and your followers, which is very unique, Richard, and that is that your engagement is both at a level of professionalism and virtuosity, but it's also at a very pragmatic and a way that you can engage with people and talk to them like they're just a good friend or a human being across the street. You're just having a dinner with somebody. The whole engagement that you have found with our supporters is a very big part of the success of it. I mean, we've put a structure in place to support what you're doing, but fundamentally it's because of the way you've actually presented this wonderful art to our supporters, and they love that because they know it's not only special but it's genuine and it's a shared love for all the reasons that people come and want to listen to you play. The vast bulk of them are there as just ordinary people knowing that there's a special musician, but he has a very down-to-earth way of engaging with the audience, and that's I think an unusual relationship. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think you can say it is now the orchestra that is part of that communicative process.
Yeah, because you've brought them up with that sort of. In fact, you've chosen people in that same vein, which is why it's been.
But look how we've expanded. Oh my goodness! So we're still only 17 musicians, but we now have this extra orchestra now called ACO Collective. And most births are with pangs. I mean, you don't have to go that far into the Bible to find a justification there, which is ridiculous. But the birth of that ACO2, now ACO Collective, certainly didn't. It was a difficult.
It was
one.
a difficult birth.
Especially amongst the musicians, who some of whom aren't there. Actually, most of whom aren't there. I got into some real fights with them because they didn't understand the concept. And then, of course, once it was formed, then they loved it. And so it is with a lot of things. But that really is a fundamental. That's our way forward now. Interestingly, I mean, it will always be orbiting the nucleus of the ACO core. But it's a very interesting way for us to move forward and something that shouldn't be underestimated.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I helped support was the idea of continuing to grow a range of different things within the orchestra. I mean, we've got the collective, the ACO2 collective, our whole emerging artist program, our education program. Now the latest one, ACO Next, you think about ACO Virtual, you think about the various projects you've done, the Reef, everything else that's come along. I mean,
and we've got Mountain.
And Mountain, the next one.
And Mountain to Climb, the film.
That's right. Which
directed by Jen Peetham, who's just enjoying, hopefully, she's enjoying the success that has been afforded her new film, Sherpa, which is a wonderful documentary. So the timing has been great there. Yeah. But all of these things, they do cost a lot of money. And And we have this amazing fundraising arm. And wouldn't it be great if all of it could come from ticket sales? But it is the bane of our existence to an extent, but it's something we just have to simply accept. And finding that balance and calibrating it, from my role in that, the management's role, and then the overseeing role of the board is a very, very difficult balance to achieve, isn't it?
But I think, really, Richard, we think about now the amount of time we've spent together, 15 years in his role as chairman. I think we've got that balance right. We've had our ups and downs, but overall, that dynamic between the board, the management, and the orchestra and the musicians has been really well managed overall, because we're still here, we're still talking about it, and still, I think I'm proud of our involvement, and I'm also proud of the relationship that's been built between everybody, and that doesn't happen by chance. You've got to keep working. You've got to keep working at it. And communication, as we know, is one of the most fundamental parts of that, and making sure we have a way to talk about things that we don't agree with, and when we do agree with stuff, actually find ways to also transmit that message, because that's great too.
I don't mind not agreeing or not being agreed with, so long as it isn't based on personal issues. As soon as it is, then you've got problems. But there've been very few real, crises that are based on personal issues. But the big crisis in '99, we ended up learning so much about the company and what our raison d'etre, and we evolved a lot. I think we've got 99, 2009, I can't really remember. And about, we are changing a lot. Now we're entering into a period of great change, I feel, just because of that, this facing us, because this will change the whole dynamic from a financial perspective and artistic as well, because it means that we can present our own concerts in our own hall.
Yeah, that's right, and that's very fundamental and very important. So I think this dream of trying to get to P23 and have our own performance space and show the world that this is our home and this is where we can really keep the creative juices going. It's very important. Of course, we travel around the world, we travel around Australia, a lot of our programs are outside Sydney, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a home where you can actually, that's the place where you come back to and you sort of regather your thoughts and you create new energies and go out and conquer again, So I'm me, I've been pushing this for a long time, so it would be one of the greatest.
But you need everyone else to draw the same conclusion, which is an interesting part of leadership, isn't it?
It is. But you've got to the thing with leadership is you've also got to let people voice their concerns and let
thrash
them be heard.
out their concerns.
And they've got to be, as you said before, it's not a personal thing, it's about actually letting people be heard and let them feel that they've had a say. Even if you don't finally do something that they've articulated, at least you've given them the opportunity to air their particular voice. So that's interesting. But I was also thinking about a comment you made a second ago about the, it's a pity that we can only get 40% of our revenues from ticket sales, and the rest of it has to come from philanthropy. But in a sense, there's another way to look at it, Richard, and that probably is that, our benefactors and sponsors, but particularly our benefactors who give us probably half of the sponsors give us one half, and the benefactors, the other benefactors, donors, what do you want to call them? Individuals. They do that because when they give us money, whether it's for a Medici Council person, a seat, or whether it's for the Chairman's Council, for the international touring, or whether it's for, the education, they're all vicariously enjoying the fact that they've given that money away. And that connection is a very important one for a lot of people, to feel that they're connected, not just by sitting and watching, but actually by contributing.
Well, exactly, and it is a feeling or a sense of belonging in a deep and profound way, so that they're as connected to the music as they can possibly be without actually performing it. Yeah. But it did strike me that maybe we could consider new ways of distributing tickets. So look, subscriptions, they're a kind of, I don't think you could tamper with that, but the single ticket thing, for certain concerts, maybe we should tie it in to benefactors. So if benefactors, say, give us, $150,000, And maybe you say, okay, well, as a result of that, and this is for the greater good, that we'll release X amount of single tickets for free or $10, and they can be called the, Guido Belgiorno-Nettis, single ticket sort of offer or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting concept, and I think
because there's a big disconnect with someone who gives us $100,000 for the tour, but we're still trying to sell a little seat here for $100.
Okay. Well, the biggest change that was made at the Biennale while I was
when it went free
was when it went free, right? And how did that happen? Because we sold this concept to the sponsor and said, you are going to facilitate free entry. So they made that connection between the two, and they got a huge amount of kudos for providing free entry for an international art event. And there is a really interesting lot. So we've cracked something here in this interview. We hadn't really thought about it. Well, no, I haven't heard this articulated so well, but we should go back and really work this up and see whether we can make that work. But you've got to be careful that people don't hang on and don't subscribe or don't buy a ticket because they're waiting for the free one. So you've got to get the right.
They won't necessarily get it. So the subscribers subscribe because they know they'll get that seat, and they'll get this experience guaranteed because they've traded money for that guarantee. Whereas this is guaranteed. There's no guarantee, and it's pretty much last minute. But it's still, I just think it's, because I've been thinking about this single ticket thing for a while, and it hurts, the single.
Right.
And it hurts.
As we know, and it's very unpredictable. And as we all know, I mean, how bad luck is it that you set up a program 2 years in advance and then somebody's gone and put another bloody big event on right next door?
Just but see, what's changed so much in 20 years is the amount of stuff going on in our cities.
That's right.
Like in Adelaide last night, our orchestra was playing, and the cabaret festival's going on in Adelaide. And Barry Humphries Cabaret Festival.
Oh, as well, on top of that, Barry, so it's a big draw card.
Yeah, and then, Melbourne, so much going on, and then all the cities combined and triple it, and then you got Sydney, the city of Sydney. So much is going on. And the other night, for the past couple of weeks, these streets out here, from all the way down here up to the Opera House and south, I felt like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Did you come in for Vivid?
For Vivid? No, I was.
And then try selling a ticket for something else during that.
You can't do it because everybody's out watching Vivid. And so it should be, but then the question is, how do you actually plan around that? And you've got to really think about it. But Richard, that's a very good idea. We should raise it with Tim Callanan and just see how we might progress that thought. So this is the crucible for we'll just say this is where that idea has been lodged firmly and taking some root.
It's on video.
It's on video, that's right. I think I just want to come back to the other things that Transfield's done, because we are talking about a very great support that my brother Luca has given to us here, because he's been half of this thing with Transfield, as we've been in partnership for 15 years together in the last chapter of Transfield's activities, and our engagement with the arts through the Biennale and through the SCO and Sculpture by the Sea and many other things. But ultimately, we put our own brand behind it because we felt that we really wanted to be associated with the OCO, that is Transfield, and that's been quite good for us. And in the development of our own businesses and having this wonderful orchestra to actually take our business partners to
and also you never, like, if you try to make certain connections with people, and if you realise that it was born out of the Chairman's Council, and that ex-banker met ex,
and that happens all the time, and that's why that's how the idea of the Chairman's Council came about. That whole idea.
And it's easier to network like that than it is shouting at a football match, right?
Yeah, it is, and much more pleasant, to be frank.
Well, you said it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a wonderful forum. In fact, it's my favourite forum. It's a lot of fun. And
it is good, isn't it?
And people love being.
And you're energised because of the music.
Yeah.
And you're alert, much more alert because of the music. Don't you find going to a good concert makes you?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Stimulated in every way.
You come out of it. I mean,
it's like reading a good book, isn't it? Your mind is just your synapses are starting to connect.
Yeah, and particularly some of the directors or the soloists that you've had. What's his Solimna? Solimna. He was just fantastic. What energy! Amazing energy. It just you couldn't sleep for hours afterwards because there was so much adrenaline running just listening to this guy play and so. But that's the other great thing about your own international network is you can get access to these sort of people and they want to come and they want to come and play. I mean that's just fantastic. Yeah. My mother. Well, let me set the scene for my mother in this sense because she was definitely the deep cultural thinker in our family. My father started the Biennale. He was personally interested in art. He had the Transfield Art Prize before that in the 60s, and he was a painter. He was quite a
he learned that from
but he learned it when I was when he was in the prison camps, prisoner of war camps in India, of all places. He got caught.
I forgot about that.
So he got caught. He was fighting with Rommel, the Germans, in North Africa, and with the Italian army,
in Ethiopia or something?
Yeah, I think so. And basically got captured by the Brits. And the Brits, of course, are so good when it comes to the conventions, Geneva Convention, all that stuff. They shipped him across to India, and he was in a prisoner of war camp for like 2.5, 3 years during the war. And they got everything. They got canvases, they got paint, they got brushes, they even had a set of tools to repair watches. So he became the watch mechanic.
Wow.
He became he would do portraits for people, and then he learned how to paint himself. It was just an amazing time. But anyway, that's Dad, which has given me, and there's a whole other chapter there we can talk about, which is about my sense of ease with the arts, because he was always engaged with artists, and he loved that activity. And so we would have lunches at Transfield where there would be politicians, there would be big CEOs of other construction companies or sub-suppliers, and then there'd be artists, and they all be mixed up. And it was just the most amazing sort of conversations you could imagine having. But that was Dad. But my mother was deeply cultured.
Yeah, and she loved
she loved her particular thing. She loved music, but she loved Renaissance art. But she came from that very classical part of Italian culture, and she gave me the confidence to
always when she talks to me about music, it comes really from there. It's not just something that she's learnt.
That's right, correct. Yeah. So she had given, and I must have got the genetic bit from her, because my father had no interest in music.
No, that's right, because I met him long time before I met you, and he wanted to go on about Paganini, but once I started playing, I could tell that he was like thinking and not listening.
He wasn't. He didn't.
But it was also with wine as well. You said that's interesting.
That's funny. And in the Huntingtons, of course. Montrose, with Montrose and the Roberts, and that's a whole other chapter. We can spend hours on that one, which we won't. But but getting back to Mum, she has been very passionate and very supportive of me in this role that I've played with the orchestra, and loves you, of course,
it's
dearly.
been a wonderful relationship.
And she's had a wonderful relationship, and to the point where you guys at the ACO recommended she become the patron of the Medici Council, which was a great thing for her. So that's Mum. Yeah.
And coming from Florence, right?
She's Torino. She's
Torino. Oh yeah,
Torino. She's from Torino. Right. But of course, Renaissance art was based in Florence. So there was a stage where I think Mum, in her readings, because she used to avidly read at night, had a great memory. She should have been a professoressa of Renaissance art. There's no doubt about it. That should have been her calling, and she would have topped everybody because she just knew everything about it. So you go to Florence with her, you go into the Uffizi, and virtually every work she knew about, and the stories behind them, and it was just
isn't that amazing?
It was like an encyclopedia.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so you got that bug fairly. I mean, how were you in your teenage years? Was art?
Well, I first got into.
I got music. Your mum's from Torino, but your first car was a Tirana. Oh.
No, it wasn't. It was a Mini, actually. It was a Mini Morris.
Like Mim.
Like Mim. It's exactly right.
Except he had no brakes.
Mini Morris. No, my engagement with music really started when I learnt the classical guitar. I started relatively late at school, at about 15, 16, and and really loved it a lot, and played it as an amateur for many years.
Well, now you possess a very fine,
fine
modern
guitar.
Yeah.
That's right. Simon Marty has made a beautiful guitar for me. And that's connected. There's another story to Simon Marty. He's connected through my father's engagement in the arts, through his family too. So that's another story. No. But so somehow I got the music bug, and I'm the only one of the three boys that played an instrument half decently.
Interesting.
But I've always been engaged with music. I find that the most sublime moments in my cultural life come from music. And they were actually, I think, the vast bulk of them that I had so far have been when you played at the Huntington Estate, just so you know.
Well, the hall was so
good. And the hall was, that
yeah.
acoustic was just
perfect,
so fabulous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the works and the various, and I was still learning about classical music in those early days when I joined the ACO.
Yeah. Well, aren't we still? But yeah, I know what you mean. You were imbibing it. It felt like a sort of a learning a language. Yeah, you're always learning a language and refining it, but to get to a certain level where you can feel comfortable having a conversation. Yeah. Well, that's the most exciting part.
Yeah, isn't it? It is. Yeah. It is. That's why it's so special. And then you can resonate with the performer, and of course you guys and I know that feeling, because when you get completely absorbed with a piece of music, you're in your own world. It's like a drug in many ways, you know. And you can see when a performance is really clicking between musicians, you know, there's this, and then of course the audience can't help but get that energy that comes out of it. You know, you've got those quite amazing performances that happen, not every day, but you know, frequently enough to make it
you can't really say when they're going to happen.
But they do, don't they? Yeah, they do happen.
Sure. Yeah.
So so that's sort of my little chapter with music, and it's just still going.
Great.
Still
that
ongoing.
It came from your mum. Yeah.
Yeah. So Richard, we have for many years, under our sponsorship from Transfield Holdings, had a annual. Normally we call it our Christmas party. We tend to have it at the end of the year, and you play with a few musicians to our guests at Transfield, our Transfield Holdings guests. And I know that this is one of the most sought after events of the year. So all of our associates and friends continually look forward to having this event. We hope to have at least one last one under the Transfield banner this year.
Yep.
And we'll see,
before it becomes the Angofra.
But and in that venue there at Pier 9, because the acoustic in there too is really quite spectacular.
It is.
So that's been a really sought after event, and so when we send out the invitations, it's got like the highest acceptance rate of anything.
Well, that's like a tiny little taste of what'll go down in Pier 2-3, isn't it?
That's right, exactly. We'll have many more of those. But this is a very special area to be playing music in. I mean, there's a whole arts precinct, but
I know. Well, that's why we have to be here. So.
Yeah, these buildings are very special, aren't they? Yeah. It's a great thing that they didn't get demolished. There was a lot of talk of, and Woolloomooloo the same.
I know.
Yeah, we're lucky that these heritage buildings have remained.
Yeah.
So that's the story on our client engagement, which has been going on for years, and of course our own sponsorship.
Can't remember when we first did it. Yeah.
I think we started about 8 years ago.
8.
It's about 8 years ago. So it's been a long time that we've been sponsoring as a national tour by Transfield. But I think we were I was giving support before that anyway. But Mum's been a great supporter of the instrument fund in particular, which has been, is very important. You think about the wonderful instruments that have come in.
And the connection to Italy. I mean, that must be so dear to her heart.
Yeah. So she is. It's a pity she's getting so frail now. Yeah.